Good morning and welcome to the third day of Internship Week. I'm Professor Todd Henneman, the Internship Coordinator for the Department of Journalism and Public Relations. Today marks the culmination of Internship Week, as we learned from three members of the JPR family who graduated 5 to 6 years ago. It also is one of my favorite days because I knew all three panelists when they were JPR students. Today, they'll discuss their career paths since graduating, as well as what they wish they had known when they were in your shoes. First, I want to remind you about your chance to win some great prizes. If you've attended our other panels, you know that everyone is entered into a drawing. And today, we'll be giving out to 3 lucky students. One student will win a CSULB sweatshirt, and 2 students will win beach bucks. But to qualify, you need to make sure that your Zoom profile displays your actual name, because this is a professional event after all. And that you don't leave today's session early, because we will be announcing the winners at the very end. So now let me introduce today's co-moderators. Our co-moderators are, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. Our co-moderators are Emily Rosas. She is a public relations major in her final semester at CSULB. Emily manages the TikTok account for the Department of Journalism and Public Relations. Yes, she is the mastermind behind those viral TikToks that you've seen. And in the past, Emily interned at Emily Blair Media and at Valerie Allen Public Relations. Joining Emily is Abigail Wall. Abigail is a journalism major who graduates in May and a JPR Internship ambassador, creating content for our new newsletter, Intern Intel. This semester, Abigail interned at the fashion website Purveyor. I'll let Abigail and Emily tell you about today's panelists.
Thank you, Professor Henneman. We have 3 great panelists who all graduated within the last 5 to 6 years. Our first panelist is Daniel Magaña. Daniel is an associate producer at ESPN, where he contributes to the creation of captivating sports content. He has worked on shows such as SportsCenter, NBA Today, and First Take. Daniel graduated from the Beach in 2018 with a bachelor's degree in journalism.
And our second panelist is Cornelia Nicholson. Like Daniel, Cornelia graduated in 2018 with a bachelor's degree in journalism. Today, Cornelia is a weekend anchor and reporter at Chattanooga, Tennessee. She is passionate about uncovering and sharing stories in her communities to make an impact on people's lives. From standoffs to winter storms to elections, Cornelia has covered a range of stories from stations in Montana and Tennessee.
Joining Cornelia and Daniel is Lisa Williston. Lisa has worked in digital marketing for the past 6 years and currently works at Amazon Ads as a program manager. She works on the global marketing education team and helps develop learning experience for advertising agencies to activate and optimize their ad strategies using Amazon Ads products and solutions.
Welcome, Lisa, Cornelia, and Daniel. We are so thrilled that you agreed to join us today, and throughout we invite all of today's participants to use the chat to submit more questions. We'll do our best to get to as many as possible.
Panelists, before we hear about what you're doing today, we'd like to take you back earlier in your careers. Many of today's attendees will be looking for internships soon. I know some of you had more than one internship. So my first question is, what was the most impactful internship and how did it help you? Daniel, let's start with you.
First of all, thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be here with you guys and sharing a little bit about my story and answering any questions that you may have. So yeah, I had 3 internships prior to landing my first official job. And you would think that my most impactful internship would be the one I had at ESPN, but in my point of view, I wouldn't have been able to get that internship if it wasn't for my prior internship. So they're all very important. It's just like a stepping stone into your career. So you have one internship, then that leads to the next one, and then that may lead to the next one, and eventually that may lead to a full-time job. So I wouldn't categorize any specific internship that I've had as the most impactful, but I feel like all of them are very important.
Lisa, what about you?
Sure. Thank you again for allowing me to be on this panel. I agree with Daniel. There was two internships that I had, both of which were important in their own ways. The first that I had was working on an online like political writing platform. I was a journalism major, so you would think that that would also be the most important. A lot of the times when I was at that internship, though, I was doing a lot of like back-end website like admin work. So it's funny because you get these skills that end up like working for you later on. So like when I went into digital marketing and having to like update websites and things like that, those skills lent themselves to that role. I had another internship at a PR firm, and it was really nice to be exposed to both like the journalism and the PR world. I think I realized that digital is like marketing in general kind of marries these two, and I kind of got to take the aspects of like what I love about journalism and getting to the point when you're writing something and like really like resonating with your audience, and then also getting to marry like the PR aspect of like your relationship with consumers and things like that. So again, like both very important. Take the skills that you gain from anything that you do, whether that's a role, whether that's an internship, whether that's like working at a restaurant. That's also like customer service. You understand an audience, it's everything matters.
No, I fully agree with you. Cornelia, what about you?
Well, much like Daniel and Lisa said, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to speak with you guys about my journey in the industry. I had 5 internships, all non-paid internships, before I actually got my first job on air. And I think for me, the most impactful one was actually working at Long Beach local news. I don't know if any of you guys know of it. It's like a very, very small, like little studio. Their studio is actually at the Long Beach airport. But that was really impactful because, especially for me wanting to go into broadcast, they weren't broadcasting on air, but they did go Facebook Live. And so it was very similar as to going live now on TV and going out into the community, talking to people. I really had to find my own stories. Again, very small studio, you would say, as far as like their structure. So you're really on your own as far as like going out into the community and finding a story. And that really helped me for what I do now in my actual job. A lot of things I did in my internships, I still use today as a journalist.
Thank you so much for sharing. Some of our students joining us today will be looking for internships in the spring semester. Lisa, what advice do you have for students applying for internships?
I think it's the same advice people would give you in applying for a job, right? Like actually look at the listing, actually look at what they're like looking to hire for, or if they have like an internship program, take a look at what it is that you'll be learning. I think like as you're applying, just adding in those tidbits and notes. I know it's difficult. I am at fault for doing this as well when I apply for a job, like having a cover letter and just like plug and play like different company names in different roles. But it really does make a difference when you can outline what it is that you're looking to learn at that internship, what you think that you can bring, and like things that you're learning that you're really interested in applying to the job. So for example, if you're going to be interning at for example, like I had that political a website that I ran. I had written articles for our newspaper at Cal State Long Beach. So I used those to my advantage to be like, hey, I've written political pieces here. This is like what I'm really interested in. Our values are aligned. I think that really resonates with whoever's reading it.
Okay, Daniel, what about you?
Yeah, so sorry, what was the question again?
So a lot of students are going to be applying to internships during the spring. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, so for me, the advice would be don't discard any potential opportunity. whether you envision yourself being or working in, let's say, broadcast journalism, which is my case. My first internship was mostly like a PR internship. So yeah, it's obviously not what I want to do, but it's a start, and you learn a lot of things that maybe at this moment you don't think will be beneficial to you in the future, but they really do. For instance, I was in charge of a baseball academy. I was doing PR for them, and I was handling their social media, I was handling their website, and now at ESPN, I also contribute with the ESPN social media account. So that was very like a great tool for me to kind of learn the ins and outs. And yeah, I would say don't discard any internship, even if it's something that you don't want to be doing in the future. But they're all very helpful. So don't discard any type of internship if it's not what you want to do.
Cornelia, would you like to add anything? Advice?
Yeah, I would agree with Daniel as far as don't discourage anything. A lot of my internships were actually behind the scenes. So I also interned at LA 36 doing kind of production assistant work, setting up cameras, miking, the talent and things like that. And that actually helps me in my day-to-day now, because when my first station, I was actually an MMJ, which pretty much is a one-man band as a reporter. You're running the microphone, you're running the camera all by yourself. And going into my first job, I already had a bunch of knowledge from all my internships. So that really helped me out. Another thing I would say is network and get to know people. Reach out to, the journalist in your area or people in PR in your area, and just connect with them on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and, ask them for mentorships and for advice, because you never know, that could lead you to an internship. They may have of an open position that you don't know about, that you can't find online. But I would say internships are great. At my current station now and at my last station, we've hired a lot of our interns. We've had interns that went from, one of my best friends now, she was an intern at my station, went from production assistant, so running cameras, running an audio booth, to now being a producer, to now a full-blown on-air reporter. So sometimes you have to climb that ladder, but like Daniel said, don't discard any internship, because it could lead to, a full-time position in the industry.
Thank you all so much for sharing. Would you guys like to share a little bit about your current jobs? Lisa, we can start with you since you recently moved into a new role.
Sure. So it's funny because I'm not really in like the journalism realm anymore. I work at Amazon Ads, like specifically. I'm within the marketing org, but I'm on the education team. So essentially what we do is we take different roles that might be like engaging with our ad products and solutions, and then figure out how to upskill them in order to like be successful on Amazon, either for their brands or for their business. It's small businesses, it's agencies and partners. So it's funny, a lot of things that I learned in school with like shortening text, getting to the point, understanding your audience, all those things like apply to my role now, and has only benefited me since the start. But yeah, you could be anything. Journalism is really, really open like that. So that's me. I'll let everybody else talk about their roles.
Cornelia, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so I am currently a weekend anchor, as I explained earlier, weekend anchor and reporter in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So like I said, I did 5 internships. I graduated in 2018. I worked a full-time job as a staffing agent, so something completely unrelated to journalism, because in broadcast, you really have to move far away. And I wasn't prepared for that yet. I thought I could start out in LA and just be on TV right then and there. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen very often. It does happen to some people, but it just wasn't my case. So I ended up realizing that I do have to move away from home and get my first job on air. So I ended up moving to Montana in 2020, started out as a weekend producer and reporter, moved my way up. In your first market, you're going to pretty much do every single job that they have there. You're going to anchor, you're going to report and produce all by yourself. And then after 2 years there, I moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Started out as a morning anchor or morning reporter here, then got promoted within 6 months to weekend anchor. So I anchor the weekend shows from 6 and 11 p.m. They're 30-minute newscast. And then I am a reporter Monday through Friday. So I'm a dayside reporter, just general reporter, any news of the day, any stories that we have, going out and turning it. Thankfully at this job, I do have a photographer, so I no longer have to slum it by myself with the camera and tripod and carrying all the equipment, thankfully. But yeah, and then I also fill in anchoring in all of our shows wherever they need me in the mornings, evenings, I fill in anchor there. So yeah, that's a little bit about what I do now.
Amazing. Daniel, do you want to share what your current job is?
Sure, yeah. So I'm an associate producer at ESPN. I graduated in 2018. I had 2 internships post graduation. So I had, like I mentioned earlier, I had one Top Tier Gamers Baseball, which is a baseball academy. And then my second internship post graduation, I was an production assistant at local news here in Los Angeles, Eyewitness News, so KABC TV. And then I had my internship at ESPN, which is kind of where I got my foot in the door in the company. I was hired after my internship there. I was a stats and information researcher, which obviously was not something I wanted to do, but I felt like it was a golden opportunity to get in the company and start working there. And I was there for 7 more months as a researcher there, and a position opened up in Los Angeles. So I took the opportunity. I got the job. And that's one of the important things is like once you're in the company, it's easier to maneuver around if that's what you want. So I was a little homesick because when I initially moved there, it was in Bristol, Connecticut, which is all the way in the East Coast. And so fortunately, I was only there for 7 months, and the position opened up in LA. I transferred and I was a production assistant here in Los Angeles, which was more of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in production. And so luckily for me, the position opened up and I've been here in LA ever since. I've been promoted 2 times now. So I was a production assistant, then I was a content associate, and now my position is associate producer. So a little bit of what I do is just work behind the scenes. I edit videos, I work social media, I run prompter. I do a lot of things behind the scene. So that's kind of a little bit of what I do and on my journey there.
Thank you so much. My next question is, what was the biggest struggle you had to overcome after graduation? Cornelia, do you want to go first?
Yes. So for me, like I said earlier, it was the whole aspect of moving. Everyone pretty much knows when you want to be in broadcast journalism, at least on the on-air side, that you're going to have to move to a small market, which is pretty much the middle of nowhere, miles and miles away from your family to get your start. And for me, that was really hard for me to grasp because I've always lived in California, always lived at home with my family and my parents. And so I, was like, no, I can, start somewhere, in LA. And finally I realized if I want to get my start, because I was seeing all my other colleagues and friends get their start in the industry and posting, about them turning their stories for the day. And I'm like, wow, I'm just like letting life pass me by because I don't want to take that step of moving, away from home. So that was the biggest struggle. And then eventually one day I was like, you know what, I just have to do it. And I put out applications to pretty much everywhere in the country. I think I had an offer from Michigan. It was between Michigan and Montana when it came down to it, that I was offered jobs. And I ended up going with Montana because it was a little closer to home. But that was pretty much the biggest struggle, is realizing that I've got to leave the comfort of my bubble and my friends and my home to really get a start in the industry.
Yeah, that's crazy moving. But Lisa, do you want to add anything?
Sure. So biggest struggle, I think right after I graduated in 2016. I grew up in Huntington Beach, very close to Long Beach. I commuted from my parents' house. I didn't live on campus. So I think after I graduated, I was just like, my mom had asked me, she's like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, not live here. And I moved to New York. And once I was there, I had been used to like serving like being a server my whole life or a hostess, and that is what I knew. So I knew I needed to survive. I knew didn't have a fallback. The money that I was relying on was the money I got from selling my car. And so I was like, all right, well, I need a job fast. So when I started serving again and then bartending, the money was good, but then the struggle was like, I should probably be doing something with my degree, right? So I went out and I sent out applications. I think it was like a year of just, getting my bearings in New York before I started to apply. Got an internship actually. So it's funny, like you think about internships while you're in college. I got an internship because I, like a lot of people, have imposter syndrome. And I was just like, I've been out of practice for a year. I think I just need to start with something. So I did a PR internship first. Realized that PR wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So then after that, worked for like a dating app, and then worked for a fireplace company, and then ended up working for a commercial real estate firm, and then now I work at Amazon. Like I said earlier, everything matters. Everyone's career journey is different. I think focusing on like what you like to do, what skills that you want to hone in on is going to be really important as you move through your careers. And don't worry, like we all have crises sometimes, and you don't have to have it all figured out after college. I certainly didn't.
That is great advice. Daniel, is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I would say the uncertainty after graduation, because you kind of have this idea in your mind of, I'm going to graduate and I'm going to enter the industry right away and I'm going to start working what I love doing. But sometimes it's not that way. Sometimes you have to pay your dues in that sense. You have to take unpaid internships. I took several unpaid internships and post-graduation. It's like you want to graduate and already be making money and be doing what you love doing, but it's sometimes it's not that way. You have to kind of pay your dues, and that's kind of what I would say is like the uncertainty of, okay, you graduated, now what? Like, what's the next step? And I was a first generation graduate from college, and I didn't have someone to kind of guide me or tell me, advise me on what the best way going forward after graduation is. So I kind of had to figure it out on my own. So yeah, I would say that's kind of the biggest struggle after graduating, is just the uncertainty.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up question. Since all of you mentioned moving, how important do you think it is to be open to moving away from the LA area for your careers? At least, after graduation. Cornelia, do you want to start first?
Yes, I would say if you're going into broadcast, because I know things are very different for people who are going into behind the scenes or into PR, marketing, broadcast, it's very important. It sucks because we live in LA and it's such a beautiful place to live, right? And we love Long Beach and we love going to the beach and always having the sun. But living in the number 2 market in the world is really tough if you're trying to get your foot in the door as far as wanting to be on air. Now, I know we have some people, one of my classmates, Pablo, I think Todd probably remembers Pablo, but he works at KTLA as a producer. So I think he was a production assistant or started out as an intern there. And that works if you want to be like a producer or, behind the scenes. But if you want to be on air, it's hard to do it. It's not impossible. I'm sure some people can climb their way up. It might take a while, but for me, in my standpoint, it was a lot easier for me to go ahead and get my start in a smaller market, make those mistakes where we don't have a lot of viewers, and people are going to be more forgiving if, your hair is messed up one day or you mess up on a sentence or, what I mean? You mess up on air. Whereas if you're in LA where there's so many viewers and they have such a big audience, if you mess up, that can be like the end of your career. So I kind of always tell people, for me, it worked going to a small market, making those mistakes, and then learning from that, and then kind of climbing those ranks, because you can make a big market jump. When I started out, I was in market 170 in Billings, Montana, where not a lot of people live. It's really, really cold. I don't know anyone. But then I moved to Chattanooga, which is market 80. So I jumped, 100 markets. And there are some people who even went from Montana to market 30. I've seen it happen. So even though you start out in a small market, doesn't mean you're going to be there forever. It's just kind of like paying those dues, make your mistakes, learn as much as you can, and then you grow from there, and possibly you can get back to LA. But that's just kind of my standpoint on just, don't be like me and wait 2 years to get your start in the career. Take the move, just do it, and then you'll never know what's going to happen.
Thank you. Lisa, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I feel like Cornelia and Daniel have way more POV on like the journalism, broadcasting, PR world than me. Because like when I think of like where you can be for marketing and for some of the other roles that I've had, especially after COVID, a lot of these things are remote. I know return to work is like top of mind for a lot of offices, but LA is a hub. New York's a hub. There's a lot of jobs if you're looking at like roles outside of journalism. So that's the only thing I'll say. If you do want to venture out and move somewhere else, I would consider places with the highest amount of like job market availability, and just do your research. But if you want to leave, you can leave. I did it.
And Daniel, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I would say it's depending on your field, it's necessary or not. But in my case, I wouldn't have been able to return to LA if it wasn't for me moving in the first place to Connecticut. So I feel like you have to be open, and it's a good experience. Like moving out, leaving your comfort zone, as my other fellow panelist had mentioned. So yeah, it's I feel like it's very important, and it helps you grow not only professionally but also in personally. So I would say don't close the door on that.
Thank you. So my next question is, how is your current job similar or different from the career goal you had as a student? Daniel, do you have anything to add to the question?
So for me, it's what I always wanted to do. I always wanted to be behind the scenes, working in production. But in order for me to get here, I had to go through other internships and jobs that weren't necessarily what I wanted to do. So yeah, it just kind of depends. Everyone has a different way of getting to where they're at right now. And luckily for me, I was able to end up doing what I envisioned myself as a student. But sometimes it'll take 5 years, sometimes it'll take less, sometimes it'll take more. So everyone has their own timeline, and just don't get discouraged is what I would say.
Cornelia, do you also have anything to add?
Yeah, so I think right now I am doing exactly what I wanted to do. Even from when I was like a little girl, this is always the dream that I've wanted to have. But like I said, when I started out as a weekend producer and reporter. So I've never wanted to be a producer. I didn't know how to produce. I didn't even, when I was in Sanchez's, journalism class, I never did that role of producer. I was either like the reporter on air. But when they offered it to me, they're like, hey, we want to hire you, but we want to bring you on as producer reporter. And I said yes, because that was an opportunity to learn even more. And honestly, I think it helped me make myself more marketable for my next job, when I'm like, hey, I can do it all. I can produce, I can report, I can anchor, I can write, I can do web. So sometimes when you're looking, I would say this is for in any industry, whether it's journalism or marketing or ad, sometimes the job role may not be the exact one you want, and it might have additional roles, but take that as an opportunity to learn more and add that to your repertoire and add that to your resume and say, hey, not only can I do this, but I also know how to do this, this, this. Now, granted, I don't produce at my new job anymore, and I will never produce again, but it's nice to have on my resume just to say, I can do that. And for me as a reporter, as an anchor, it really helps me to grow the people in my newsroom and help them, with the knowledge I have of producing, or, whatever our producer may need from me as a reporter that day. It helps us to communicate because I can understand their role and what they're trying to accomplish that day. And I can kind of express to them, hey, like, I know you need me to have a 2-minute package, but this story is probably only 1:30. Can we, move something around? Can I help you find another story? So definitely when you're looking for internships or your first job, no matter what it is, just kind of be a little more open, because again, you're just trying to get your foot in the door. So just be a little more open as to your job responsibilities when you're first starting out.
Thank you. And Lisa, do you have anything to add?
I agree with Cornelia. What I envisioned for myself in college and where I am now are completely different things. I thought I was like, oh, I'm going to move to New York. I'm going to work for Vice. I'm going to work for like Rolling Stone. That obviously didn't end up happening. But like Cornelia was saying, like everything that you're doing, take that into your skill as a skill into your new job. So like for me, if I was when I was working at like the fireplace company, very interesting. I was a marketing associate, basically the marketing team. When I'm now in Amazon ads, and I am like writing courses or writing like internal business docs, and then understanding like our platforms. I can tell them like, hey, when I was like in the position of the person we're trying to train, that wouldn't be helpful for me. Or for example, like for website design, we have like a learning console website that we do. If the learning console team is telling me that they can't do something and I'm like, I actually know like the back end, I think this is possible. Not to like, you learn how to say things in like a really like professional and nice way, but just being like, I think you could look a little further because I've done this before, kind of thing. So I think anything is beneficial. Again, like I said, being open, like my panelist said, being open to different roles and what you want to do is going to be the best the best mindset to have as you're moving through your career. I think one of the pillars that I stand by is being at a company or being on a team specifically that makes me feel like I belong, makes me feel needed, because I've been on teams and been in companies where I was just kind of like a floater and didn't really feel like my work was bringing value. So I know that sometimes it's not specifically what you want to do as your role, it's who is around you, who are your teammates, who's your boss, because having the right manager also helps you foster like the skills that you need and to get you to the place you want to be.
Thank you all so much for sharing. I know many of us would love to have jobs just like yours. So my next question is, what has been one of the highlights of your career so far? Lisa, do you want to start off since you're already talking?
Sure. I think one of the highlights of my career, and it's kind of funny because when I got the job at Amazon and I was leaving the job at the commercial real estate firm, the CEO of the real estate firm had sat me down, a guy that I didn't really talk to very often, telling me how much he valued me, how he wanted to figure out a way to keep me. And I know that like that's not really like a success of something that I've done in a role, but I think when I think back about my career, like that was a moment where I felt like I was needed or didn't feel as much. I know I've said this a lot, like as much of like imposter syndrome. Like I went through a journalism career. I'm in a very different position now than some of my colleagues. And a higher up is saying that I am valued and that they want to keep me. Although I obviously ended up moving and going to Amazon, but I think that was like a highlight if I can think of one off the spot.
Daniel, would you like to share yours if you have one?
I would say I have several, but one that really sticks out was my second month at ESPN. I was sent out to cover the Super Bowl. That was in 2020. And yeah, that was kind of like something that really sticks out because I mean, I was fresh in the company and they having the confidence in me to kind of send me out barely my second month on the job. And albeit I was production assistant, I didn't have let's say, a big responsibility, but it's still a responsibility that the company entrusts in me. And so that's something that really sticks out as like a experience that I will forever remember. Being part of NBA finals coverage, being able to meet a lot of very incredible athletes. For instance, David Beckham, LeBron James, different athletes from across different sports. A lot of TV personalities that I've been able to meet that I grew up watching. Yeah, I would say that there's been several that really stick out for me.
Wow, that sounds like a dream. Cornelia, do you have a career highlight to share?
Yeah, I feel like I'm very similar to Daniel, where I feel like I have so many. I think my whole career for me right now is a highlight just to be doing what I've been wanting to do. And kind of like Lisa said, that acknowledgement from your bosses that you're doing a great job. I think for me, it's our audience and our viewers who, will send us messages and say, I really appreciate you, or you're someone I can look up to. And that's really for me the highlight of this job. I know some journalists want the awards and things like that, and who doesn't, of course, but I think for me it's really being able to make an impact on the community. And that is our job, to go out in the community and uncover those stories and tell the stories that maybe not a lot of people know about, and put a highlight or a spotlight on them, and just to know that you made a difference in their life. It may not be a huge difference, but it made their day. That's a huge highlight for me. I remember when I was in Montana, there was a gas station clerk. He was like 80 or 90 years old. And he would always hand out these little notes to everyone. Like, he would print them out at home. They'd have a little sticker and just like a cute, like, little saying, a cute little note that he would hand out to everyone. And I ended up doing a story on him. And I think people started going to that gas station just to see him. And he was just the sweetest old man. And so every holiday he ended up mailing us a card to the station, just thanking us for coming out and, giving him coverage. And he said people from all over the city would come and tell him happy birthday and leave him messages. So that, situations like that are a huge highlight, where you can make you think we're just telling a story and we're just putting something on TV, but for them, it's making such a big difference in their life. And it can, last over a while, not just that day for us, but for them, it's, months or years that people know them. So for me, that's the biggest highlight, is just making impacts in people's lives.
Wow, also such amazing answers. Thank you for sharing. If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice as you approach your last semester at CSULB, what would it be? Daniel, do you want to start off?
I would say just enjoy being a student, being your final semester or close to the end. I feel like for me personally, I was towards the end of my college career, I was so worried about what's next and if I'm going to land a job or what am I going to do after graduating, and also with finals, I was so caught up in that I feel like I didn't enjoy my time there, especially like the final semesters. So I would say just enjoy it. Like, you're only going to be an undergraduate, or if you're a graduate student, one time, so might as well enjoy it. And yeah, I would say that, like, soak it in, because it's precious time. Once you're older, you're gonna look back and be like, oh wow, I wish I would have enjoyed my final semester or my final couple semesters at Long Beach. So yeah, just enjoy it.
Lisa, do you have something to share?
Yeah, so take advantage of the tools you have access to, like Adobe and the Premiere. I know that, like, when I started, I was just like, oh shoot, I had the total opportunity to learn this tool. And it was just like so funny because they cost so much money when you're not in school to have those tools. So I would, my advice to everyone here is, if you're in like a video producing or a class where you get access to like Adobe or any of the like video editing tools, or like tools that usually cost money for a subscription, try to get as much practice in as you can now, because it's going to benefit you in your career. A lot of these tools are listed as like skill sets needed. So as much as you have like as much, like spend as much time as you can practicing on those tools. That would be my advice.
Cornelia, would you like to share one piece
I
of
agree
advice?
with Lisa because once you graduate college, Adobe Premiere, once they take off that like college discount, it is really expensive. So just keep that in mind. I would also say network as much as you can, because those people are going to be your potential colleagues, your potential coworkers, you know, even your classmates right now. You never know, they could land a job and let you know, hey, there's an opening, you know, coming up, you should apply for it. I would say definitely network with the actual journalists in your area, whether that be, you know, Los Angeles or up in the Bay Area, because you can job shadow them. There's a lot of reporters that would love to teach you what they know and take you under their wing. And I've seen it happen where someone will just reach out to a journalist on air and say, hey, you know, I want to do what you're doing. I want to learn from you. Is it possible if I can come and job shadow you for the day? And they'll take you out with them to their story, and you can potentially do a stand-up, and there you already have one clip for your reel. You know what I mean? So definitely network as much as you can. Go to those conferences. I went to the National NABJ conference in 2019 in Miami, and that pretty much helped me to get my job in Montana. I've seen a lot of people at those conferences get jobs right then and there because they have a huge job fair with a bunch of recruiters from newspapers, television, PR, marketing firms. So go to those conferences, put yourself out there, and network, even if you're in college, because we have several interns, like I said, at my station now that one, she's still in college. She was actually like in a class at work yesterday, and she's already hired working with us, and she's still in college and she's producing. So network as much as you can, get to know, you know, the news directors, the news managers, you know, marketing directors in your area for the companies that you potentially want to work at, and email them and get to know them and stay in touch with them, because when you graduate, you already have that relationship built with them, and they'll keep you at the top of their mind when they're looking for new employees.
Well, that's all such great advice. Thank you for sharing. We really appreciate all the information and, like I said, advice that you've shared. I know we have received some questions in the chat and through social media. Professor Henneman, what questions does our audience have?
Yes, so a few questions have been submitted. Some are for specific people. The first question, it doesn't mention you, Daniel, but I feel like it's kind of geared toward you. Excuse me. So the question is it possible for a student who comes straight out of college to get a job with a big company like ESPN or the NFL Network? So I know you discussed this a little bit, but is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, it is possible, but it's much more difficult. You kind of have to like I mentioned earlier, pay your dues, kind of intern maybe at the company that you want to work for. Maybe you have to go out and work at a smaller station. For instance, I was at local TV. So yeah, it is possible, but you have to kind of get those experiences in order to have those skills and have those things on your resume. And then big companies like ESPN, Fox Sports, will be able to look at you and see that you have these experiences, and you'll be able to add to their network. So yeah, it is possible. In fact, I'm gonna drop a link with the internships that ESPN has. ESPN is part of Disney, so there will be other internships in that link that are Disney specific, but there's also ESPN specific internships. So I will drop that in the chat, and you guys can check it out if you're interested.
Thanks, Daniel. That's super helpful. The second part of the question, I feel like is probably addressed more toward me, which is, does CSULB work alongside students to possibly get internships with companies like these? So short answer is yes, that's part of my role. I do a lot of outreach to different companies. What I've noticed is that it's very easy and natural as a student to be thinking about just like, it's November now, so I, as a student, am thinking about spring semester. A lot of the internships with places like Fox Sports or Telemundo, which are both places that I've been doing outreach to, they will be getting the internship review process much earlier. And so, for example, many of those companies are looking for summer interns now rather than spring interns. So it takes a little bit more advanced planning if those are the type of internships you're looking for. Sometimes you look out and there's, excuse me, an opening where the place finds out they're able to have an internship that they didn't know they're going to be able to offer. And so something does open up the next semester. But oftentimes, the bigger the place, the longer out you need to be working. The next question is for Cornelia. We have two for you. The next question is, Cornelia, when would you recommend to start applying for jobs? Also, would you recommend someone like me, the student who submitted it, to apply to smaller markets like Fresno or Bakersfield areas?
So I would say when you're applying for jobs to apply probably 6 months out before you graduate, because it does kind of take some time. You'll have several interviews with your news director, potentially the assistant news director, even an anchor. Usually you have multiple rounds of interviews through the process. So typically start applying 6 months out. Most news directors will understand that you're graduating, that you're moving, and they'll work with you. I think for this job, I applied early December of 2019, and then I moved here and started. My first day was like March 7th. So, 3 months out is when I think I started my first interview with my news director, Megan. So definitely give yourself some time, start as soon as you can. I always tell people 6 months, maybe even a little earlier, because news directors are really busy. And not only are they trying to read your applications, but they're working with their day-to-day reporters and all their staff. So give them 6 months and always check in with them, send them an email and just say, hey, I did that too. After I applied on their website, I would find the news director's email and I would email them and say, hey, my name is Cornelia. I'm just introducing myself. I applied for a position. I'd love to talk with you. I feel like I can be an asset to your, to your station, yada, yada, yada. And then the second part of the question was if you should start out in a small market like Fresno or Bakersfield. So Fresno is actually not a small market. It is one of the top 50 markets, if I'm not mistaken. So Bakersfield is like 124, I think. I'll try to find a link to a website. What I usually, when I'm looking for stations and markets, I Google either top 100 news markets, and there's a website that I use, and then they have a button that shows you small markets, which is 100 to 202. And that's kind of how I started when I was applying. I just looked at the market size and what those cities were and just kind of getting a feel for it. I would say it depends on if you're going for a reporter. If you're going as a reporter, then the industry has kind of shifted now where you can start out in a bigger market. They are hiring, more people straight out of college. Like I said, my station we've had a lot of reporters that started at my station that started straight out of college. Is it easier? Probably not, because the pace is going to be a lot faster. They're going to be a lot more demanding as far as your day-to-day and what they expect you to turn and your knowledge as a reporter. So like I said, for me, it was a lot easier starting out in a smaller market where it's more forgivable, and we were a very small team. So my news director had a lot more time to sit with me and go over my stories with me and kind of mold me and shape me and give me those lessons to teach me to be better. When you're in a bigger market, I honestly barely see my news director. She's always in meetings, budget meetings and things like that. So for me, it was a lot more beneficial to start in a smaller market where you can kind of get a lot more one-on-one time with your news director and learn and grow, and then kind of move up to those small markets. But I'll find a link to the website and I'll drop it in the chat that has all the markets listed 1 to 202. And when you click the city name, it'll show you all the news stations that are in that city. And then you can obviously click that website and go to their website and look at their jobs, but I'll put it in the chat for you.
Thanks, Cornelia. And the next question is from the same student. His name's Zachariah Perez, and it's also for you, which is, Cornelia, I'm interested in the same exact field as you. Can you talk about how contract work in news works as well as salary? So.
Okay, I think they've been like how yeah. So when you start out in news, you know, every on-air broadcaster, whether that's anchor, reporter, or even producers for the most part, we're all under contract. That I know that's not typically how it works in like any other industry. You just kind of get hired and you start working, and if you want to quit, you can quit. But in the news industry, we do all have contracts. So when you first start out, you're probably gonna have a 2-year contract. That's normal. So you're on contract for 2 years. That's typical for everyone. And you kind of just have to do those 2 years. The contract will have all the information on if you get a raise at your, you know, first year, if you don't get a raise, or kind of what they kind of expect for you, to list out your job details and things like that. So definitely before you sign anything, read over it completely, fully. Most contracts for on-air people, you can't just quit. So a lot of them will have buyouts that'll say, you know, if you want to leave the station, you're going to have to pay us $2,500. I think that's how much was in my first contract. I think this contract may be like $10,000. I know it's a little alarming. Sometimes you can work with your news director and say, hey, you know, I'm not feeling this. I don't think this is right for me. I really want to leave, or whatever. And sometimes they'll let you out your contract for free, but definitely read through your contract before you sign it, because, you know, there could be things in there that you're not paying attention, that you sign away and you're like, oh, I didn't know I was required to do that. And they're like, well, it was in your contract. So definitely read over that. And salary, I'm going to be honest, we all know working in news is not a glamorous job. You work really long hours. Like I said, you're wearing multiple hats, doing different positions, and we don't get paid a lot. Especially when you're starting out. So when I worked in Montana in 2020, I started out as, like I said, producer reporter, and I was making $12.22 an hour. It was $12.02 an hour, and then at my year, I got a raise of like 24 cents, which is like nothing. So just be aware that when you start out, a lot of people, you know, have to get second jobs just to make ends meet. So that is a big issue with the industry as of right now, because we don't get paid that well. But once you move up, it starts to get better, kind of. It's not the most amazing thing, but, you know, when you're a journalist, you go in the industry to better the lives of people. We're not trying to do it to be rich and famous. But just be prepared for that when you first start out, is you're not going to make a lot of money. It is going to suck at first, but it does get better when you move up the ranks. And you can also talk, you know, with your news director about getting raises and promotions and things like that.
Thanks, Cornelia. So Lisa, maybe you can tackle the next question, which is, are there websites or sources that you suggest as being good places to look for internships or jobs?
Yeah, I think they listed like the LinkedIn, Indeed. Those are good places. It's funny, I actually found the the PR internship on Craigslist. I don't really know if that's a good place to look anymore, because I think when people hear Craigslist, they hear like sketchy. But I was able to find a perfectly fine internship on Craigslist. Obviously, like proceed with caution. In New York, I know that you guys are all in California. We have Built in NYC, which is a startup website for like entry-level jobs and also for internships. You might look there to see if they have remote internships, because that's a possibility in our day and age. So if you're just looking for volume, I think like the more you apply, the more the better your odds, right? So that would be my advice.
Thanks. Sorry. Is there anything, any other sources anyone else would like to suggest? I'll move on. The LinkedIn is, I know, like the #1 place nowadays. Jobs are listed, so you can set up your own alerts. Sorry about my cold. So our very own Gary Metzger has a question, which was there one class that helped you the most at LBSU?
I think all the classes give you skills that you can take on and into your career. For me personally, since I wanted to be in broadcast journalism, I think Professor Sanchez's broadcast class was really helpful for me because that's ultimately what I wanted to do. I gained a lot of experience there. So I would say for me, that was kind of the one that stands out. But like I said, all the classes, they give you something that you can take with you, um, and they give you all the skills that you need in order for you to continue your career journey.
Yeah, I think for me, it was Sanchez's class. I think it was like the on-air class where we had, the studio, and it kind of gave us a real view into, at least for me anyway, the on-air and broadcast parts of it, because everything else was kind of our writing classes and learning to write on air. And this gave me a chance to do, I'm more of like a hands-on learner. So I had to go out and find people to interview, and I had never really done that before. And so I had to break out of my shell and not be so nervous to ask someone like, hey, can I interview you? Like, I'm doing a story. And kind of like Lisa said earlier, like that imposter syndrome, because I'm like, well, I'm not a real journalist. I'm a student, but honestly, you are journalists. Like right now as a student, you are an actual journalist. You are turning, stories, whether it be for online or for a blog or even for a class, you're still, turning a story and you're still a journalist. So that was something that I had to overcome. But Sanchez's class really helped me with that, and editing stories and putting it together and learning how to use Adobe Premiere, because I used that in my first job. We had Adobe Premiere for editing software, and now we use Edius, but it's still learning to edit and put those stories together. So her class definitely helped me a lot as far as getting that hands-on experience of a real kind of day-to-day of a journalist on air.
Thanks. Sorry, Lisa.
I can just add, I am the same way with Cornelia, like hands-on training is the best for me. I am a little out of practice. Like I said, I graduated like 2016. I can't remember like if it was a class or not, but when I had to work for the newspaper, that was the best experience for me personally. Again, yeah, having to go out and interview folks, going back, editing it, getting like edits back and not taking them personally from the editor-in-chief at the time was a great experience for me. It really prepared me for like some of the corporate world things that end up happening to me now. So it's like, okay, when things are actually constructive and are going to move things forward, being able to copy edit like other people's work also serves me well in my current role. Sorry, Todd, I know I cut you off. You're about to say something.
Cut you off. I'm glad that you spoke up. Student asks, I'm planning on doing the internship class in the fall of next year. We've revised our curriculum slightly since at least Lisa, you graduated. So all students are required to take an internship class where they have an internship, which might be a little bit different. We had the anyway. Is there any advice you'd give about planning that out and preparing? So I'm not going to address that because the students can talk to me anytime, and it was submitted anonymously. So whoever you are, feel free to reach out to me by email or drop by my office in LA4 206, and I will give you my lowdown. But Daniel, Cornelia, Lisa, do you have any suggestions on what the student should do to prepare for finding an internship next fall?
Again, I would say just start now, looking for those internships, thinking about places that you might want to internship, kind of think about what you want to do as a career, and what place would help you grow into that, and just start looking around and start applying. And like Todd said, asking him if he knows any openings. I know Sanchez usually posts some on Twitter. I think she posted CNN is looking for interns coming up. So, talk with your professors, let them know what you're interested in, what type of field you want to go into, and I think also when I had my internship class, I don't know, was it Fleming? I can't remember. I don't know if she did internship classes, but I think she had a list. It was like a whole notebook list of like places that were looking for interns. So just like I said earlier, network, talk with your professors. You can find an internship. There's always internships. There's always places looking to teach someone something. So just start looking now, and then when it's time to apply, you'll be ready to go.
Great. We are just coming up on noon, and so I want to respect everyone's time. On behalf of Emily, Abigail, and the entire JPR community, thank you, Lisa, Cornelia, and Daniel. We're so fortunate to have you as part of our JPR family. Before I announce the winners of today's drawing, I have two important announcements that tie directly into what we were talking about. And I just taken a second to get the slide up in case for people who are more visual. There are two relevant workshops coming up next week. The Career Development Center will be hosting one that focuses on writing resumes and cover letters, which is perfect for whether you're about to seek an internship or a job. And for that question about preparing for next fall, for really anyone looking for an internship, I would recommend that you either go to this workshop or schedule a one-on-one appointment at the Career Center to get feedback on your resume. So that workshop is next week. The other one is tailored to students graduating next month, focusing on finding a job. So I will drop those links into the chat on how to register for those if you're interested in attending, but you RSVP through CareerLink. The second announcement is about 10 scholarships that are available from the Radio, Television, Digital News Association, which prides itself on being the world's largest professional organization devoted to broadcast and digital journalism. The foundation not only provides funding to help with your education, but these scholarships also pay your expenses to attend the annual conference. The deadline to apply is December 21st, and I will drop the link in the chat so you can learn more about that. Speaking of money, now I get to give out prizes. And today, one of our students wins a CSULB sweatshirt, and two others will win beach bucks. And so we use a randomizer. I've been texted the winners, and my phone went to sleep, so just a second. They are, the sweatshirt goes to Yesenia. I apologize, I'll probably mispronounce your last name. Zavala, Z-A-V-A-L-A. And the beach bucks goes to Hannah Gilmack and Stephen Matthews. So you will be receiving an email later today that explains exactly how to get that, to get your winnings. So thank you again to our panelists for all of their time today and sharing such great information. And it was for me like really nice to get to see you again. If students want to connect with you in the future, is the best way through LinkedIn, or what would you prefer?
LinkedIn's good for me.
Okay.
I'm
Same here, LinkedIn.
I'm like the oddball out. I'm not a LinkedIn girl. I'm sorry. I'm like on it rarely. I think Todd had messaged me and I was like, oh my gosh, I saw it like 2 weeks later. So you could either, I'm really big on Instagram. So Cornelia Nicholson TV, you can message me there, or you can send me an email at cnicholson@local3news.com.
And I just remembered that if we had time, the one fun question I was going to ask Cornelia, you might know where this is going. So for those of you who don't know, Cornelia was proposed to on air, and it basically went viral. Like I saw it on like People magazine, like you name it, and it was like people's happy story of the day. So Cornelia, what was that like for you? Because you suddenly were both like the subject of a story instead of reporting a story, and also it really was like everywhere for a while.
Yeah, it was a little crazy, and for me it's so different. Like you said, I'm usually the one telling the story. I'm never the story. So it was so different to, like you said, People magazine, they called me to interview me, and I think like the Miami Herald, and I was so nervous because I'm like, I don't ever, am I interviewed? Like, I don't talk about myself to people. Like, why do you want to know about me? I'm not special. So it was really cool, and it was so great to have all the love and support from everyone, and my inbox was blowing up from complete strangers from all over the world just saying they saw and congratulations. And so that was really sweet, and we appreciate it. We're so happy. And even I think you guys posted it on your Instagram, and we love that too. And I was like, wow, my alma mater still loves me. So that's cool.
We do. We love all of you. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.